For those that don't know me, I'm Reverend James Peake. I'm coming to you from the foothills of the Rockies here in Colorado, and where we had 8 inches of snow on Friday, and current temperature is about 10 degrees. A little different than what's be going on in Georgia and other places throughout the country. So I'm thrilled to be back here again this week to join you and be a part of your wonderful service. And my talk this morning is going to be on revealing wholeness. And this idea of wholeness sometimes I think gets misconstrued, and people may not be clear on what is wholeness and how does it show up. And if we're not living a life grounded in this idea of wholeness or this reality of wholeness, what can we do about that? And so I'd like to start by making sure that we're clear on a definition. And it's my definition because it's my talk, so I get to define it. But I think there's 3 foundational pieces to understanding wholeness. And one is, again, that there's one life. I mean, we hear it all the time in all the teaching and all the talks and services. It's really what Science of Mind and other faith traditions are grounded in, the idea that there's one life, there's one God, one spirit, whatever label we use to describe it is what it is. It's one. And as Lee alluded in his introduction to his prayer, it creates out of itself, and yet it doesn't diminish itself. Somehow, it has the capacity to create all that is, all the seen, the unknown, the yet to be, out of itself, and yet without diminishing itself. For it seems to be this infinite, creative resource for itself. And how it does that is really unfathomable to us in our human experience, or I imagine regardless of what the next great beyond may be, that we'll ever be able to, in our personal, our localized expression or experience of life, in whatever form, that we would be able to fathom the intelligence that the whole life has itself. So what this wholeness really is then, it's the essence that all life must be one, unified, intelligent whole. And of course, that includes each of us. So that's the good news. That's the fun stuff that we get to play with this morning. So we're going to be standing on this platform of wholeness and kind of jumping off. And the first jumping off point I'd like to get into right away. We're not going to dally around a little. If we are whole and complete, and we're of this one life, and we're of this amazing intelligence, why do we suffer? Why isn't every day kumbaya? Well, I think that there's 3 points I'd like to make about this, or 3 ideas I have around why we suffer. And one is that we often believe a false narrative. Now, this is very common in the world. We see this everywhere. A lot of folks believing that they have very little power or control in their own lives, that life happens to them. Life is just a big circumstance. We pay taxes. We have all these challenges. Life basically is just yuck. So that's, an example of a false narrative. But the ones I think that really pull us out of wholeness are narratives such as there's me and there's you, that we're separate. Because anytime there's separation, it easily allows me to dehumanize you. If I'm really, truly living this wholeness, understanding wholeness, recognizing that we are both of this one life, of this wholeness, it makes it very challenging then to dehumanize you, to push you away, or to think of us religious scientists, us CSLers, we know what's going on, and those other traditions, they don't have a clue. So any of that type of belief in separation really can take us down this path, or down into a rabbit's hole, if you will, of non-wholeness, of separation. There's also the narrative that the less than, not enough, I'm only human narrative, where now I'm thinking about my own experience or self, and I've created a narrative in my head that, I'm not good enough, or I can't do this, or life never works out for me. The belief that whatever happened in the past drives the future, which we know in this teaching, since the teaching is based on principle, we know principle has more power, more truth over anything that's happened in the past. That we are free to change our thoughts, change our actions, move into a different mindset, a different perspective of life. And thus we are free to change this idea that we're not enough. And another one of my little pet peeves is this phrase or this idea that we're only humans, like it's some excuse that, I can't live in integrity, or, I can't be kind to people. I mean, give me a break. I'm only human. Well, have we ever really stopped to think about what it means to be human, to have this human experience? I mean, I think it's amazing. So we have spirit incarnated into a form with this amazing tool known as a brain that's running this body, with this ability for our thoughts to affect outcomes, to manifest things in our lives, to know the truth for others through the one mind. I mean, it seems to me that being human isn't just I'm only human, but it's an amazing thing. So we can get rid of that narrative too. And another one that I find often, especially for those of us that are on the spiritual path or the spiritual journey, looking for that return to wholeness or return home, is we get very serious about it. I have to do this treatment the exact right way. I can never miss a night if I'm taking classes. This is my spiritual path. I'm very serious about it. And we lose the wonder and the innocence that we had when we were children. If we think about it, when we're young, 6 months, a year, if we can go back, we're just pure awareness, not distinguishing between the external world, the internal world, not making judgments on things, just a living, breathing expression of spirit. And there's an innocence and a wonder about that. But somehow, as we get older and become adults and become serious, and now I'm responsible, we lose that. We lose that wonder, which I think is vital to live in the mystery of life. It's such a grand mystery. There is no way we have any idea of how all this is going on. We understand principle and we can understand truth, but how life does what it does is simply beyond our grasp. So there's a natural wonder, but somehow we seriousness is out of ourselves. So those are some examples of false narratives. And regardless of the false narrative, all it does is it's creating a mental block to truth. And we can get pretty mental in this teaching. Science of mind, a lot of times we prefer to say science of mind and spirit to remind us that, there's spirit, there's love as part of this. But we can get a little heady and create these mental blocks that diminish our experience of truth, or diminish our ability to be present to what is. We get so caught up in our head. And then now the second point I want to make about suffering, or the idea about it, is that this human experience is very rich. It's also very challenging. And just thinking about loving relationships. Someone would say at our core we're love. And to be honest, I don't believe that. I believe we are simply love, not at our core, but throughout, since life itself is part of its essence, is this love, this unconditional love. It's for itself, therefore it's for each of us, that we are love. But as humans, loving relationships bring us a lot of joy, a lot of highs, a lot of sorrow, a lot of grief too. So this human experience, this idea of being human, as we move through it, if we're open to it, we're open to feelings, we're open to the emotions, it can be very rich, can be very challenging. And most of our relationships at some point are going to have a major shift or may end. Someone may pass on, or you may be told that, it's been fun, but I'd like to go in another direction. So that can be very challenging, and that can lead to suffering if we've lost the perspective. Not that we deny the experience, not that we're pushing it away, but if we've lost the perspective, the understanding that we are wholeness in action. Because there is a way to hold the truth and recognize that as we are open to feeling these feelings, these challenges that may come up. And the other thing about this is just in the human experience, sometimes people are idiots. They're idiots on a big scale, whole nations looking to harm other nations. But sometimes they're just jerks not on the freeway. And that can pull us out of the remembrance of who and what we are. And so it can lead to some emotional or mental suffering. And the third piece about the suffering is we just like to argue with reality. We want life on our terms. I want this, and this is when I want it. I don't like that. If that person would just change how they are, my life would be perfect. Well, guess what? Probably not going to happen. You can do treatments till the cows come home, as they say. But good luck trying to get somebody else to change their behavior and how they are in life, their unique expression of life, to satisfy you and your desires. So when we argue with reality, we're really setting ourselves up for some challenges and some suffering. But regardless of how messy life becomes, regardless of any of this, it doesn't change the truth that the essence of wholeness is always there. Sometimes we'll hear the term back of all things. And it's not that it's hiding, but it's just that it's there. It's always there. The foundation is always there of wholeness. Even when we forget, and we may slip into a weakened state where we don't feel any power, we don't feel strong. So how do we forget less often? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. Simple to understand, may not be easy to do. And that's to build our wholeness muscles. We're going to get pumped up this morning. We're going to get strong with wholeness. And I recommend 4 exercises. Now, how many reps you do, how many sets you do, that's up to you. But the first exercise we're going to do is we're going to see wholeness in all and remember all is one. That all, everyone, everything, this technology we're using this morning to come together, to be in this unique space of cyberspace, spiritual cyberspace. It's all life. It's all God. So regardless of what we see in the world, regardless of the choices people are making, even if they're making choices because they've totally forgotten who and what they are, that are harming others, we can remember and recognize that it's all one. That the wholeness of life cannot be cut up, destroyed, taken apart. So another exercise we're going to do is remember that this idea that all is one and all is whole includes the one in the mirror, or this morning, the one on the screen. Sometimes it's very easy to know that everybody else is loved, that know that everybody else is God expressed, and yet not know it for ourselves, not know it for the one in the mirror. So we're going to build our muscles by, instead of running and hiding when things get challenging, remember and sense back into that wholeness. That oneness of life, that spiritual creativity and love that God is. Because we haven't forgotten it. We are it. We cannot not be it. And within our being, there's a remembrance. Spirit knows itself. And that can't be lost. And so as we avoid or move away from, make a choice not to run and hide, and sense into this wholeness, it's more easy to reveal our heart, our love, and our light. And that helps to build that wholeness muscle. The third exercise we're going to do is just an exercise of trust. We're going to trust in the wisdom of life. Simple example is that there's this wisdom or intelligence in life that knows how to take an acorn and turn it into a tree. Now, I couldn't do it. I don't imagine any of us here can do it. We can create soil or create the environment with the soil. We can plant, we can water, we can make sure it's getting enough light. But we have no clue how that acorn becomes a tree. Life knows. Life knows how to do that. One that I like to think about, because it just blows my mind regularly, is just this whole idea of a solar system. All these planets. The planets itself are amazing. The fact that they're balancing in the universe and they rotate and they move around. I mean, who comes up with that idea? How does that work? And there's a sun, provides the heat and the light for life. It's pretty wild. It seems like there's some unfathomable intelligence going on. And we can't forget that it knows how to take a fertilized egg and turn it into a human. It knows how to take a fertilized egg and turn it into a human. Each of us. So that intelligence that knows how it did that, how it took that egg, fertilized egg, turned it into a human being, that intelligence is part of who you are. Where could it go, right? It was there. It knew how to create a human. It knew how to grow a human, go from a toddler to a teen to an adult, very serious adult. Well, maybe not so much. But that intelligence must be there. And so just trusting in the wisdom of life, having the knowing faith that life will show up in a way that is supportive of itself, helps to grow that wholeness muscle. And the fourth exercise we're going to do is recognize and remember that life is ever-changing, growing, evolving. Because when we want to hold on, we want, oh, things are so perfect right now, I don't want anything to change, please. What do you mean they just canceled my favorite show? What? There's inflation? All the prices are going up? No. We need to keep the prices where they are. And it can spiral into a million different things. But life is ever changing, whether it's the manifest universe, whether it's the creativity that's going on behind that we have no idea. It's constantly changing. Change is the constant. So to the degree that we can allow, accept, and be okay, and know that, hey, life's going to change. In my case, I'm going to get more gray hair, whether I like it or not. I can pretend it's not there. I can color it up a little. But guess what? The truth is, it's going to continue to get more gray. But by accepting and understanding and knowing that life is going to constantly be changing, it allows me to more easily be present to what is and allow for the awakening back to this true nature of wholeness. Now, sometimes when we're exercising, you do a particular exercise in a couple different ways. So one of the ways that we can utilize this exercise of remembering that life is ever changing and evolving, and to allow that to be, is to get quiet and listen. That even though things are swirling and changing, there is a constant, unchanging nature to spirit, nature to God also. And as we get quiet and listen, and that may seem like a paradox, but it's not. There's an intuitive understanding that's beyond thought that effectively speaks to us. And it allows us to do these extra sets we need to build our muscle and to ultimately live a deeper truth. So we've built up our muscles. We are buff now, baby. What do we do with it? What do we do with it now that we are strong with wholeness? Well, the nice thing is from this fullness, this strength of wholeness, we are so strong that we allow life to be what it is. There's no need to control it. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't preferences. That doesn't mean we don't treat. But we don't need to control outcomes. We don't need to control life. We can allow life to flow. We can allow for a deep acceptance of what is without judgment. That doesn't mean we sit idly by if we see something in the world that we'd like to move in a different way, and I'll get to that in a moment. But we can move into a deep allowance for life. And in that space, we can more easily determine what we're for. In other words, what's the call of our heart? If we slow down, maybe do one less latte a day, a little bit more meditation, maybe walk in the woods, we can start to more easily sense into the call of the heart. Where does our spiritual energy want to go? We can root in this idea that Dr. Holmes put forth of being for something and against nothing. Because there's power in being for something. That's the creative nature of life. That's the yes. And when we're against something, again, it takes more energy. We're putting up a barrier. I don't like that. It leads to suffering. It doesn't lead to positive change. And so this can be confusing sometimes. So I have a few examples for us this morning. So are you for functional families rather than against gang violence? We can be against violence, and our against energy really isn't changing anything. It's pointing out that we're against it. But if we can be for positive change, bring our energy there, wherever we're called to do, whatever the work is we're called to do, we are then aligning with that creative nature of life. We're aligning with that power. We're not simply just pushing back against a demonstration in the physical realm. So would you rather be for humankind thriving and living in peace or against war? You sense the difference there? You sense the power in the for? Are we for awakening to our true nature rather than making an enemy of our ego? When we have this strong wholeness muscle, this strong understanding, we can more easily recognize and come from that for energy and make a difference, rather than just being another one who is fighting against something, which doesn't lead to real change. Because there's more going on in the world than just the physical thing that's on display. There's always a spiritual element to it. There's always a deeper truth at play. The last thing that this muscle allows us to do is be real. Because at the end of the day, the lived experience of truth is rather easy. It's the stories that we tell ourselves. It's the lies we believe. It's the perceived less than that gets in the way. But if I just live my deeper truth, it's actually a rather easy and simple way to live. Grounded in spirit, being wholeness, being love, if we allow it. So the invitation this week is, rather than turning away and hiding, dive into your wholeness, your goodness, and allow the natural joy and innocence to come forth and lead the way. So I invite you to join me in prayer now. If you're comfortable closing your eyes, feel free to do so. What I'm present to is the joy of creativity, of power, and of love that this one life is. It must be so. There's no way to divide itself. It must be wholeness. It must be a unified presence, intelligence, love. There is no place that this thing called life, this thing called God is not. It's not simply in us. It is who and what we are. It doesn't simply move through. It expresses as. And so as there is this one life, it must be true that each and every one of us here this morning in cyberspace, those that will listen later, must be of this one life. that unfathomable intelligence is who and what we are. That infinite capacity for love, compassion, generosity, kindness, creativity, beauty must be an aspect of who and what we are. We cannot know beauty, recognize it, if we aren't it. And so I claim this morning and know the truth that as each and every one of us allows for a deeper walk, a deeper expression of the truth that is looking to express in our experience, in our actions, in our relationships, in our finances, that as we allow a greater truth to come forth, we live that truth. We are a light and a beacon for those that may have forgotten, those that may be trapped in their own story of less than, of not enough. But there's an intuitive knowing as we walk this path that others sense the truth that they are. But there's an opportunity here today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year after year, to continue to show up as wholeness, as love. Not only for our own experience, which is grand, which is wonderful, which is full of awe and excitement and innocence, but also to support those who have seemingly forgotten who and what they are. For as we know there's only one, we know that there's a truth beyond a connection. That as we see wholeness, our thoughts can affect the outcome. And so moving into a place of thanksgiving, of gratitude, I simply give thanks for that spiritual law, that spiritual mechanism, if you will, of life that takes the impress of our thoughts and simply makes it so we get to be right. Whether that's thoughts of limitation or that's thoughts of infinite creativity. And so as we move now into this time of release, letting this treatment go, I know that there is nothing I have said, there's nothing we have thought or felt that has changed anything about God, for it is the unified whole, creativity, the love and the intelligence. But we have recognized and understand the truth, thereby opening the door to living that truth. And so I just declare it to be done. We let this treatment go by simply anchoring and saying together, and so it is.
There is a power for good in the universe greater than you are, and you can use it.